And we are live, and it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 attendees who would probably want to speak during public comment. 6. And we are live, and it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you're ready, Mayor Smith, like after you call the meeting to order, I'll ask them if they want to speak. Okay.
Okay, it's 7:30, so I would like to call the Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Oxford City Council to order. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bracken.
Here.
Mr. Ellerby.
Here.
Mr. Prithridge.
Here.
Ms. Ragu.
Here.
Mr. Snavely.
I'm here.
Ms. Southard.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Southard. All right. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
For approving the agenda,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby.
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge.
Yes.
Ms. Ragu.
Yes.
Mr. Snavely.
Yes.
Ms. Southard.
Yes.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right. Normally, we would start with the presentation tonight, but our presentation has been moved back to the resolution section. So we will begin with public comments. Anyone wishing to address council about items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, please state your name and address for the record. And Mrs. Green will handle our virtual commenters.
Those of you watching, it would help me if you raise your hand on the bottom of your screen so I can see that you want to speak. And I'm going to start with Ms. Schran, Heidi. You should be unmuted. Go ahead and speak, Heidi.
Marvelous. Hi, everyone. My name's Heidi Schran. I live at 319 West Withrow Street, Oxford, Ohio. And I want to thank you all for your service. It's fun to see all of you on Zoom and for letting me speak this evening. With all of the horrific and disturbing events this past week, I am really thankful to be able to attend a vigil for George uptown next Monday, June 8th at 6:30. And I recognize this is a really complex issue and includes lots of facets, 2 of them being institutional racism and citizen and police relationships. There have been really disturbing and violent incidents across our country where the trust between citizens and police have been eroded. But one of the benefits of living in Oxford is that I found is that members of the police are active members of our community. Last night, I got to be a spectator at the parade for the seniors, and we had multiple members of the police that helped facilitate that to happen. Our school resource officer, Officer Butler, Rick Butler was there, and you also helped with the coordinating of the tribute for Mike Davis, the school treasurer, and our police chief was actually my son's flag football coach at one point. So I really appreciate the community and police relationship we have in Oxford. Dr. Amy Acton, Ohio Department of Health's director, spoke on this complex issue of racism in Ohio today, and she reminded us, that our children are watching us as we go through this, and how we respond at this time is going to be what they will model their actions on in the future. And so as a parent and a teacher, I know that they're very keen on how we respond at these difficult teachable moment times. So I would like to encourage as many members of the Oxford area police, including Miami and the township and area police, and any area elected official to actively participate in Monday's vigil, possibly taking a knee, citizens and police, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to recognize some of the problems that are inherent in our society at this time and our willingness to work towards finding solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi, I'm going to mute you again. So if you want to speak, you'll need to re-raise your hand.
Thanks.
Next, I have Mr. Mead. And okay, Mr. Mead, you should be able to speak now and you are on camera.
Okay. Oh, okay. Patrick Mead, 100 Lantern Ridge Road. I've been a resident of Oxford 48 years. I'm also a member of the Oxford Police Community Relations and Review Commission. It's really hard for me to determine what to say in a public forum about the systemic racism and the policing issues that exist in our country. So I'm going to leave that to people who are much more eloquent than I am at writing or speaking. I can only speak about what I know. And like all of us here, I'm called to be involved in my corner of the world. In my corner of the world, Oxford can be a bubble in so many ways. But our corner of the world has many of the same problems as the rest of our country has. And we can choose to make those problems worse, which some people seem to do. We can choose to bury our heads in the sand and pretend everything is fine. Or we can face the injustices in our society, even those here locally, and the issues that we face, and work to improve things for everybody in our community, for all people. Now, first of all, I want to commend the Oxford Police Department and the city of Oxford and the citizens of Oxford for their work in making Oxford a better place to live. Back in 2015, and some of you were there, the city council created the police commission, the oversight commission. And since then, the commission has worked with the OPD on improving community police relations and on improving the police department. And I think we've worked well together. We've reviewed training, we've reviewed use of force policies, hiring, body cameras, and other issues. The police department provides to us data about arrests and citations that includes age and racial breakdowns. And Chief Jones and the OPD has been very cooperative in that. We keep pushing them to get more so they can give us breakdowns on pedestrian stops as well as traffic stops or things. But it's a good working relationship. And if you read the chief's Facebook post, you'd know that Oxford Police Department is well led and really desires to be seen as guardians. What's it saying? The people are the police and the police are the people. And I think that's a desire, and hopefully we can keep moving forward to get that. And I would encourage students to read Chief Jones's post. I would also encourage them to go to the city websites and read the yearly reports that the commission puts out and read the data reports that the police provide the commissions on policing in Oxford and who's being cited, who's being arrested, et cetera. I do think there's still work to do. I think right now, a lot of people are so frustrated, myself included, so angry about the murder of George Floyd, about Breonna Taylor, and about so many others. And I think what we need to do as citizens and what people need to do who are going to show up Monday night or here at council listening tonight, we need to turn our anger and our frustration into action to at least make our little part of the world better. Now, I would hope people listening can become more aware of the Oxford Police Commission. We're going to meet next Thursday, the 11th, via Zoom at 7 p.m. And people are welcome to come and participate in our meeting. We are looking for citizen input. We want an open and honest dialogue. There really can't be reconciliation in America without first truth. And we need people to speak their truth. My truth as an old white guy in this town is different than other people's truth. We need to allow ourselves to hear other people's truth so we can continue to improve. So hopefully people can join us next Thursday. People also can, I believe, find the email of the commission members on the website. They're welcome to email commission members. I know a lot of people are hesitant about complaining. It's a very hard thing to complain to the police if you don't trust them. They can email a commission member and tell a story. And it won't be an official complaint, but it's information out there to help us do better. So that Oxford is what we all want it to be, that welcoming, safe place for everyone. I'm also asking council maybe to become a little more involved in our work somehow and provide us with feedback and input. So thank you very much for your time. And hopefully some of you will be listening in next Thursday. And we hope to see many people uptown Monday night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mead. I'm going to go ahead and mute you again. Okay, and if anyone else would like to speak, please click the raise hand feature on the bottom of your screen. I don't know if Mr. and Mrs. Welton would like to speak, or Miss Story. I'm going to wait for just a minute here. Or Miss Franklin, I see that. I think that might be you. Okay, I don't see any raised hands. So if you want to speak, please go to YouTube and just type in the chat that you'd like to do public comment, and I can turn your microphone on. That will allow me to see that. So I think we can proceed for now. Thank you, Mayor Smith.
All right, thank you. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Snavely, second by Mr. Prithrick. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none. Ms. Eaton, will you call the roll to approve the consent agenda, please?
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
yes,
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to resolutions tonight. We have one resolution. So Ms. Eaton, you may read the resolution whenever you're ready.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Oxford, Ohio, calling on the U.S. Congress to pass funding for the United States Postal Service.
May I have a motion to adopt?
so moved,
All right.
Seconded.
Adopt by Mrs. Southard, second by Mr. Prithrick. I don't know if there's anyone from staff would like to comment on this. All right. Then I don't think we had anybody from, actually we do. We do have a public comment on this. So let me go to Mrs. Green.
At this time, I'm going to have Miss Dana speak. It's a public comment, and then I have a few other comments when she's finished.
All right.
Miss Dana, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you may speak.
I think I'm unmuted, am I?
Yes.
Okay. I come before you tonight for three reasons, actually. The first is to be in grief and sadness and fear over the death of Mr. Floyd. The second is to introduce new League members, League of Women Voters, and we have had an addition to our executive committee. Jenny Fisher, Sandy Roy Hazelton, and myself are all part of the League of Women Voters board. And I do voter service, and Sandy Roy Hazelton does programming, and Jenny Fisher is our person who takes care of administrative details. And they could not be here tonight, and so I'm here representing them and the league. As many of you know, the League of Women Voters started over 100 years ago with women securing the right to vote. And I'm going to speak on both voting and the resolution for the funds for the post office. Those are two things that are intricately important for each other. And so what the League did is write a statement, which I'm going to read to you now. Butler County error is a warning for November. In the recent 2020 primary election, 317 mail-in ballots will not be counted in Butler County. These ballots were postmarked before the election deadline, misplaced by the U.S. Postal Service, and delivered for our Butler County Board of Elections too late. We don't know who those voters were or how they voted, but clearly every voter deserves to have their voices heard. Our 2020 primary election was a bewilderment of confusion in the middle of a rapidly changing public health emergency. We were ultimately pleased, though, that Ohio prioritized the health of the voters and poll workers. But this election clearly presents a learning opportunity. We are 5 months away from the 2020 general election. It's clear that the COVID-19 public health emergency will continue. We must learn from the past challenges to improve the elections. Unfortunately, if the power players in Columbus and Washington do not move on these issues, the November 3rd election may be even more disorderly. Our electoral system was designed to support in-person election day voting. During a public health emergency, it is reasonable for many citizens to want to vote by mail. The Butler County Board of Elections staff worked diligently to process the mail-in ballots during the pandemic, all the while trying to keep themselves safe. Lawmakers need to allocate funds for the Board of Elections to run a fully funded vote by mail program in the fall, as well as a safe in-person voting with the proper protections in place. Ohioans should be able to request their absentee ballot online. The USPS, a constitutionally designated institution, needs to have adequate funding and support to ensure timely delivery of vote by mail applications and mail-in ballots. Secretary of State LaRose requested an explanation on the error of the 317 ballots in Butler County. In response, the USPS sent a letter on May 15th describing a missort of the mail tray and a promise of going forward, we would make institutional protocols to ensure the timely delivery of election mail. The corrective action described was vague and non-descriptive. We hope that the Butler County voters will be given a more detailed account of the root cause of this problem and the proposed solution. While voting by mail may remain the safest option for voting during the pandemic, many Ohioans will not trust the mail after this challenging primary. It is unreasonable for voters in the far corners of the county to drive to the Board of Elections office to the drop box in Hamilton to drop their ballots. Therefore, we call on Ohio lawmakers to fund and require multiple drop boxes for mail-in ballots and applications for this November. There are several other what is called common sense improvements that can be made. One is early voting, another is online absentee ballot, prepaid postage, and there are several others. I thank you for your time, and we fully support this resolution that's coming before you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dana.
Thank you. I'll now read a couple other public comments that were submitted prior to the meeting. There are 3. The first one is from Marilyn Elzy, 3301 Spruce Lane. And she says, I hope that City Council will pass a resolution which will support funding the U.S. Post Office service and not let President Trump privatize this essential service. The second is from Margaret Beckwith, 4358 Kerr Road, and she is in support of funding the U.S. Post Office. She states, the U.S. Post Office is an essential service to our country and this community. It supports business, commerce, communications of all of our people. I strongly support the U.S. government funding this institution and to maintain the office in our local community. To politicize this issue and starve it into bankrupt and give it into private hands will further undermine our democracy. For the good of our community and country, please demand that the U.S. government fund this important service. And last but not least is from Barbara Wickham, 312 Erickson Drive. And she states, please support the U.S. Postal Service, and just states that she supports this resolution.
All right.
And I do see a raised hand from Ms. Franklin. Do you mind if I unmute her? Is that
That's fine.
Ms. Franklin, you are now unmuted. You can speak. Amber? Did you mean to raise your hand?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Okay,
you're unmuted now.
thank you. I wanted to echo what Patrick Mead said about the work that the Police Commission has been doing with the Oxford Police Department. I wanted to mention something that I thought of as I watched the video of George Floyd's murder on camera. I'm a speech pathologist and a linguist, and I study accents and dialects, and I'm always paying attention to speech and to words. And one of the things that I've not heard people talk about in relation to that video is that while Mr. Floyd had the officer's knee on his neck, there was another man off camera, sounded like he was likely an African-American man, who was pleading with George Floyd to simply get up and get in the car. He kept saying several times, man, just get up and get in the car. And to me, it's a reflection of the internalization that marginalized people have had on with the oppression that they feel in society, where they feel so disempowered that they would rather look at someone or sooner look at someone with a knee on their neck and ask that person under their own steam to get up and get in the car, rather than to ask or demand the agency or the people who are oppressing that person to stop oppressing that person. And I think for too long in our society, we have expected people who are on the fringes to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And I think that was a very vivid example of how not everyone can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And one of the things that I appreciate about being in the Oxford community is since COVID-19, I know there's been a lot of work with the food bank and a lot of different organizations to help those that are marginalized and to support those who are struggling. And so I want to continue to see that kind of galvanizing force happen around our push for more justice for people of color and people everywhere. And I look forward to seeing many of you at the vigil on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this point, we will go to council discussion of the resolution at hand. I'm seeing Mr. Prithrick's hand up.
So I just want to thank Councilor Southard for crafting this resolution. and to Ms. Dana and the league for its work in support of this and related stuff. I think this is the perfect use of a resolution. We can't do anything really locally to fund the postal service, but we can ask our elected representatives, our senators and our congressmen to do what's right. I mean, I think the postal service is always integral to our society, but with upcoming elections and the mail, it's just more essential than ever. So I'm glad that we're lending our voice. And Ms. Dana's statements make me think that we need to do a resolution for the Ohio House or Senate or governor, because it sounds like it's a multi-part thing. One is about the mail and the other thing is about drop-off boxes. So maybe we can follow up with a resolution to Columbus asking that they solidify the voting side of it. But anyway, just thanks and just reaffirming what Councilor Southern has proposed, I think is really good.
Councilor Southern.
Well, right now, the U.S. postal system is in jeopardy. And the issue that we've been hearing about is funding or perhaps even privatizing the postal service, which would not be good. And although this is a national issue, clearly, as we all agree, has local implications. The postal service has benefits both individually for each of us and as a community living in a small town. We really need the postal service for communication, but also for jobs. There are many jobs here, and I think it's essential to preserve our democracy so that people can vote by absentee ballot and that we can have voting by mail. So this is not a partisan issue. I want to emphasize that, but a benefit for preserving elections and preserving our democracy. And that's why I think it's so important now, only as the funding for the system is being threatened, and in a time when we are only 5 months from a major election, and at a time when we are dealing with a major pandemic in which many people will not be able to get out, so they will want to vote by mail. So that's another, so there are many reasons why this is an important thing to do and why I proposed it. And I'm so glad to hear Councilor Prithridge's support. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'm just going to chime in and echo what's been said. I think particularly in the year of 2020, the Postal Service and voting by mail could become essential as we near our presidential election. So I thank you for bringing this forward. If there are no further comments, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. The resolution is adopted. Move on to ordinances tonight. We have one first reading. So Ms. Eaton, you may read the first reading whenever you're ready.
An ordinance authorizing the tax budget for the year 2021 and directing that the same be transmitted to the Butler County Auditor.
All right. I'm guessing I will turn this over to Mr. Newland.
Yes, thank you. This is the annual tax budget to be submitted for the coming year to the Butler County Tax Commission in accordance with requirements stipulated in the Ohio Revised Code. Approval by the legislative body is required by July 15th and due to the county by July 20th. The tax budget's required for the county is essentially a preliminary budget estimate for next year. Beginning in August, we will undertake our normal detailed line item budget analysis and preparation. We'll spend approximately 3 months of intensive preparation for a detailed budget, and the final approved budget will then be submitted to the County Budget Commission to replace this preliminary estimate. Excuse me, the tax budget provides a first glimpse at the 2021 general fund budget. We prepared this budget with approximately 0% change from the 2020 amended budget, except for a few items, which I'll go through. And it was prepared as follows. The one thing I did do is in the, I haven't brought it to council yet because I don't really know the final numbers, is for municipal income tax, I decreased it to $8,700,000. And the hotel tax, I decreased that to $200,000. And those are just preliminary. And again, this budget is not binding in any way. It's just the first step. Basically, what the county uses this for is making sure that you bring in enough property tax revenue to be able to pay off your general obligation debt. So the 2020-21 budget compared to the 2020 estimate, actually I got to fix that for next time. I did the wrong years there. Local government fund, I decreased by $29,848. The total expenditures are decreased by $565,901. Law enforcement, compared to the 2020 estimate, is $36,948, and those were prior year encumbrances. Woodside Cemetery is increased by 900 or decreased by 950, and those are again, those are just encumbrances. Community assistance is decreased by $10,000, and that was the $10,000 that we did a one-time authorized payment to Butler County Rural Transit Authority. The senior center is decreased by $76, and that's in 2021, we had to show a payout of workers' compensation of $76, so is adjusted for that. The aquatic center is down by $5,068, and that was encumbrances. Planning department was decreased by $50,000. Now is because this year we have the housing study in the budget in 2020. Urban forestry is, compared to the estimated, is down $14,032. Again, that was prior year encumbrances. MIS is down $13,082. And part of that was in earlier this year, we brought a budget adjustment in for $13,900. And that was for extra IT help since we've been doing a we're moving heads around in the MIS department, and that's for extra support from our outside IT consultant. Finance was $2,063 less. Again, that was prior year encumbrances. Income tax collections is $75,501 decrease, and that's to match the expected revenue of $8.7 million, because those figures are tied to what the revenue figures are, the retainage, and what we expect the refunds to be. HR and communications is down by $1,505, and that was prior year encumbrances. Municipal building is down $1,555, that's prior year encumbrances. City garage is $109, prior year encumbrances. Courthouse is down $4,900, that's prior year encumbrance. And engineering is down $16,984, and that was again was we brought in the budget adjustment when we gave the part of the refund for Northridge subdivision after they've completed their improvements on the street. Transfer to capital equipment, again, to be able to have a balanced budget, I decreased all the transfers to the improvement and capital equipment fund to match the amount of money that is expected to be left over to transfer to those. So the transfer to equipment fund is down by $1,070, 177. Transfer to capital improvement fund is down $264,294. The transfer to the aquatic debt center, again, I haven't brought this in, but we'll have enough money that was left over from the construction fund to pay the debt this year. So that transfer I'll bring into council, it was about $308,000 will be deducted this year. But next year we'll be having the money transferred out to pay next year's debt service. Transfer to the small business loan, that was a one-time adjustment when we brought that in as a excuse me, as a budget adjustment this year. And the contingency is down by $76. And that $76 was actually moved up to the senior center to account for the $76 that went into personnel expenses for this year. And then for all the other funds, I'll just go over the ones that changed. And all the rest are exactly the same as the 2020 budget. First one would be parking meter fund. They eliminated transfer to the parking improvement fund because we won't have the money available next year because that fund is getting depleted this year with the free parking that we've had the past couple months. The fire EMS fund, I decreased the capital equipment purchases by $675,000. And that's for the rescue pumper that was in the budget to be purchased this year, since we're not going to purchase it twice. All the South Point TIF transfers, I proportion them to meet the debt service payment that we have next year, since the money that we bring in for the TIF rather than the property taxes is set aside to pay off that debt. The small business or fire claims, no revenue or no expenditures, because that was a one-time issue with the building that burnt down back in 2019, excuse me. Small business loan fund, no revenue, no expenditures, because at this point we don't know how much money we'll have coming in as people purchase the card. So it's no sense guessing that figure. The Aquatic Center Debt Service Fund, budgeted revenue expenditures to match the 2021 debt. South Point Debt Service Fund, budgeted revenues and expenditures to match 2021 debt. Capital equipment, the expenditures are changed to match what we're transferring out of the general fund. Capital improvement, again, the expenditures are changed to match the transfer of the general and what comes in from the parking fund. Parking lot improvement fund, there's no revenue or expenditures. Municipal facilities, no activity. Same with the Oxford area trail improvement. There's no changes from 2020, I'm sorry. And then South Point roadway TIF capital improvement fund, no revenue or expenditures, since that roadway's slated for this month to be started on construction and should be done by the end of the year. And then on water capital equipment, the expenditures are tied to what we're transferring, so we're not decreasing the fund balance in that next year. The water improvement fund, the same, the expenditures are matched to what we're transferring from the water fund. The next one would be wastewater capital equipment fund. The expenditures match what is transferred from the wastewater fund. On wastewater improvements, the expenditures are matched to what's transferred from the wastewater fund. And solid waste, we reduced revenue by $200,000 of the grant that we were going to apply for this year, but we chose not to. And $500,000 in expenditures for the purchase of the equipment to grind all the tree limbs and leaves that come to the facility. And the last one, the hotel agency fund, I reduced the revenue and expenditures to $200,000. And again, we'll have a better idea as we get closer to budget time. If that's a good figure, it may have to be reduced from that. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. And we do have in the next meeting, we have scheduled a public hearing for the tax budget, because that's required by Ohio Revised Code.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newland. Questions from council? All right, I'm seeing Mr. Prithik's hand.
So, Joe, if you could talk me through this about the knowns and the unknowns. You've adjusted the tax budget based on what sounds like things that we know, encumbrances we don't have, or things like that. But you've been sharing with council trends in income and other tax revenues. So there's a lot of unknowns on the revenue side. So can you talk to me about how you're, this is just a tax budget to go to the, this is not the budget, but how will you incorporate some trends we're seeing when we start talking about the 21 budget based on declining income tax revenues or some of the other trends you're seeing so far?
Well, at that point, we'll have a better idea. We're really going to have a clearer picture of what the income tax revenue decrease will be this year come August, since the amount that, or they extended the filing deadline. So usually we would see that money in May. And so it's going to be pushed back to probably August, September at the latest. So we'll have a better idea, and then being able to track the individual. We have withholdings, we have individual, we have net profit tax. I'll be able to get a trend to see how those are going, and then incorporate that into what we'll budget for revenue next year. As far as the hotel tax, the last time we had a recession, they went down for 3 years straight, or they were down for 3 years, and then they gradually started working their way back up. So again, we'll get a better picture as September and August receipts roll in to see if those are in line with last year. Chances are they won't, because there'll be a lot of people perhaps not choosing to travel with the virus being unknown, not wanting to pick it up in the rooms, etc. And we'll have a better idea. The state will give us a better idea of how much to expect the local government funds to drop sometime, hopefully in July and August. Because last month we saw our first hit. It was down 36.6% compared to the same month last year, and expect that to be down even further this month. And that's all the taxes that the state bring in. And it's going to take a while for people to go out and buy cars again, people to go to casinos, just the regular tax stream that's coming in, sales tax, the income tax for the state. So chances are that'll be lower than what I've got in there. But at this point, rather than guess, I'd rather just wait till we have a firmer picture. And those are really the main revenue sources that will be affected. The property taxes, really the only effect we would see is perhaps delayed payments, people choosing not to pay the first half of the year, and catching up in the fall. Usually the first half of the year, people are catching up from the prior year, but that may not hold true this year due to the problems that people are having in their own personal lives. They may have to push that off. But again, property taxes, we'll never lose them because that follows the property. So once the property is sold, we will get it back. It'll just be delayed.
So just as a follow-on then, that by the time we're actually doing our operational budget in the fall, we should have a clear idea, for example, about what Miami is doing, because I imagine we'll be really dependent on what they do. So hopefully Miami can provide us as much information as soon as possible about any employment changes, because we're so income tax dependent. We would want to know as soon as possible what those numbers might be. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? All right, good discussion. This was a first reading, so we will see this again at the first or the second reading in June. We will move on to our second readings. Ms. Eaton, whenever you're ready, you may read the first second reading.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance Section 1137.10, non-conforming signs, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance section 1137.10, entitled Non-Conforming Signs.
Right, may I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Prithrick, motion to adopt by Mr. Savely. All right, I will turn this over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, this is the second reading. I'll actually do both of them at the same time. It's the same topic. So this was a Planning Commission recommendation for text amendment. There's a couple chapters that were involved. And what this does is it would allow property owners who have existing multifamily developments, particularly in the Mile Square and the R3MS district, to have freestanding signs if they have a large enough property. So at least 1 acre or 250 feet of street frontage. So it wouldn't allow every one of those multifamily buildings, but it would allow the larger ones to have their own freestanding signs, similar to, it's of the same size that existing and some of the newer multifamily developments have had, a 24 square foot freestanding sign. So no changes since the first reading, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, council discussion. I think we talked about this in May, so. Ms. Souther?
Could you explain for the public why this is coming up now? Because of course, we had the signage that uptown that was a little looser now, but that has nothing to do with this. And so I just wanted the public to understand why this is coming up now and what the ramifications might be.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. The process for a text amendment does take several months. So this originated several months ago. It actually came about at a request from a property owner through a settlement. But the way this is written, this would affect many properties. So because of that long process, it just happens to be timed with other things that aren't related. But you are correct. We did relax our temporary sign enforcement during the COVID pandemic in order to encourage businesses to go ahead and advertise, as long as it's not affecting any kind of public health or safety issue. But that is correct. This is unrelated. This was actually in the process prior to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll whenever you're ready.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Ragu,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. All right, the ordinance is adopted. We will move on to our second reading. Ms. Eaton, you may read it whenever you're ready.
An ordinance repealing Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 1151.05, entitled Permanent Signs, and adopting new Oxford Codified Ordinance, Section 1151.05, entitled Permanent Signs.
All right, may I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
See Mr. Snavely, seconded by Ms. Southard. Anything to add to this, Mr. Perry? It was tied to the first one.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Any further council discussion of this portion, this ordinance? Mr. Prithrick?
Just a real quick comment. I know that this kind of had its origins in part in a lawsuit with an individual property owner. But I'm glad that what we did is we changed the code to make it uniform. And I think it's pretty reasonable. So again, I made the comment before, this is not opening up our code radically to new signage. These have to be very large properties, for which I think a 24 square sign, which seems big, is probably pretty appropriate. So I think most people are not really going to notice changes around this, and it will probably help identify the building. So I appreciate the Planning Commission and Community Development staff for using this opportunity to make our code better in a reasonable way.
All right. Anybody else? All right, Ms. Eaton, you may call the roll whenever you're ready.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Ms. Raghu,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. That ordinance is adopted. All right. Now we're going to move on to announcements and communications, and I will start tonight with Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a few comments. As you know, we have our Oxford Leadership Group meeting, having a telephone conference each week, Monday, and I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. I also wanted to include the fact that the Butler County Board of Health each Thursday updates their report, which shows the number of COVID-19 cases within our zip code, which of course is 45056. So the updated figure did go up to 22. It was 17 the week before, but it represents only 2.6. It was like 2.5% the week before, so it went up to 2.6 of the all reported cases in Butler County, once again, as of May 26th. Total cases in Butler County, according to the report, is 836. So Mike Everett, the CEO of McCullough Hyde Hospital, basically updates us on what's going on in the hospital. And he did share with us that throughout this whole pandemic, they've had 50 persons test positive for the COVID-19. Now, you might wonder if the Butler County Board of Health is showing 22 and he's saying 50, where are those other 28 cases? And they serve folks outside of our zip code, of course. So we have to say that those represent folks from Indiana and Preble County. So once again, 50 positives at McCullough Hyde Memorial Hospital. And Mike did share with us that they're very busy now with non-COVID-19 patients. He did share with us that the week before they had 2 babies born in the automobile on their way to the hospital. So those youngsters were in a hurry, those infants were in a hurry to enter the world. As far as visitors go, they're allowing 1 visitor per patient. They have plenty of personal protective equipment, so I believe we're in good hands. I also shared with the City Council that we received notice from Glenwood Energy of Oxford of the elimination of the BTU adjustment rider fixed component. This rate is 0.1218 cents per MCF, and it will be eliminated effective June 30th, 2020. This rider is there to account for a change in their gas sources and the energy content of that gas. So it will be eliminated effective June 30th. The effect of this change on a consumer using 100 CF of natural gas in a month would be a reduction of $1,218, $1.21, or $10.35 based on an average household use of 850. So yeah, it wasn't 1,000. It was basically $1.21. I also wanted to share with you that we will have a resolution in front of council at our next meeting to create the designated outdoor refreshment area. It is on file with the city clerk and it's on the city's website. So we will receive public comments at that meeting and we will ask council to approve, amend, or disapprove of this application. So if it is approved and adopted, the next step is that the city would notify the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, and the Liquor Control Division then will issue a special designation at no cost to the qualified permit holders located in our door. So this last step will probably take 3 weeks. The earliest I think we might see it implemented is around the middle of July. It all depends on how long the Ohio Division of Liquor Control would take to provide that special designation. As you're all aware too, the municipal building and other city facilities are open to the public as of June 1st, and we are requiring that the public practice social distancing, and we are recommending that they wear face masks when they come in. If you've been in, you'll see that we have decals placed on the floor in front of the counters to remind people the 6 foot distance between people. We have hand sanitizing lotion at those counters as well, and plastic shields to protect our employees and the public. We also spent last Friday in fact finding with the patrol union, and we expect to have the fact finders report a week from this Friday, and we expect then to present that to City Council in executive session at that meeting, discuss it. Both parties, both the labor management group, or excuse me, the labor group and the city will be asked to either approve or disapprove it. If one party disapproves it, then it goes to the next step, which would be conciliation or binding arbitration. And lastly, I just want to thank the community for having this vigil next Monday, June 8th, up in our Uptown Park. It really says a lot about our community. I'm very proud of our police division and the leadership we have there. Very proud of our Police Community Relations and Review Commission, the chairman and the members of that. It's a very good group. And as Pat stated earlier, we discuss a lot of important issues in our police division. So, I'm very happy. I think it speaks volumes of our community and how we feel about this blatant racism that we saw in Minnesota. I mean, Oxford does not condone racism in any form, and the violence was certainly a total disregard for human life. So thank you all. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Chief Jones, is there anything you'd like to add tonight?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I just want to thank Pat Mead and Heidi Schran for taking the time to come on to talk about our police division and the positive comments from them and the hard work that the community is doing, and also thank Dr. Franklin for her words tonight. Kind of echoing what Mr. Elliott just said. Police community relations, it's an ongoing work. This came back into the limelight back in 2014 after the incident in Ferguson, Missouri. And that's when PCRRC was formed in 2015, late 2015. And that's when I was transitioning to the role of police chief in early 2016. So while the in-custody death of George Floyd has brought it back into the limelight and everyone's talking about it again, this is something that I think that we work on all the time, and it's an ongoing issue that we constantly work to improve our relationship and find ways, and it's hard work. The OPD and the PCRC members have been working on these issues and talking about how do we improve police community relations for a few years now, and community policing has been a decades-long effort of the Division of Police here in Oxford. So we got to keep doing the work, and it's not simple. Every traffic stop, every pedestrian stop that an officer makes, or every interaction with a citizen, the officer has to balance the need to enforce the law and do it in a way that is congruent with what City Council has asked us to do and what the state legislator has asked us to do, and doing it in a way that is, carrying out procedural justice and doing it in a fair manner. And we use procedural justice in sometimes volatile situations to kind of further our legitimacy in the community. And so, if anybody from the public, I issued the more comprehensive statement on Facebook, and I shared it with council. So that has a lot more of what we're doing, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate that it's ongoing work. We have a long way to go here in Oxford, but I think we're doing tremendous things. And so I thank the people that I work with, and thank the PCRRC for continuing to do that work on a daily basis.
All right. Thanks, Chief. We will go to Mrs. Green.
Good evening, Your Honor and counselors. I have a few updates. One, I will also say that I'm extremely proud to be contacted by many residents to organize a visual or an event within just days. And so I'm proud to live in this community that responds so strongly to injustice, and that it's also supported by staff and leadership. But other updates I have is just in general, what's going on is I'm serving on a committee with Miami University. It's called the Miami Safe Return to Campus. And it's a committee of many people at the university. And I'm glad that they've invited me to be a part of that for the Oxford Voice. And so we've been meeting twice a week, and we're talking about how and when we could bring Miami students back. And we talk about all types of scenarios and safety things. But I wanted to let you know that I was serving on that committee, and that we're talking through lots of things. The second is that the e-commerce site, I'm sorry, is delayed a little longer. I just want to make sure that we do it correctly and without a lot of glitches. And we realize that we need to take a step back. We need to get all of the gift cards from every business. And so to do that, we're calling every business and talking to them and making sure they have their tax form turned in. And it's just taken a little longer than I imagined, but we are actively working on it, and we will launch that site as soon as we can do it correctly and smoothly. So stay tuned. And then finally, I just wish us luck. I'm hoping to submit an Oxford Area Trail grant on Friday. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I was able to finish a rough draft this evening, so I'm feeling a little more confident that I can get it in. And but that'll be due Friday, so I'm hoping to turn it in the next couple of days. And that's my update. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Newland, anything you'd like to add tonight? All right. Mr. Perry, anything you'd like to add?
If you've seen my weekly reports, we're in the middle of our software transition, so we're rolling it out this week, and we're getting some feedback from contractors and applicants, and so over the next several weeks and months, this is involving multiple departments. So thanks for approving that in the CIP, and I think it's going to make us more efficient and able to handle more volume and be more transparent with the public. So you'll be hearing more about that over the next few months. That's all I have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Ms. Eaton, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just a reminder about your 2019 financial disclosure forms. Those are due July 15th this year. So again, I only know of 2 counselors that have filed. So if you need help with it, let us know. Or if we can reimburse you, if you've already done it, then you can let me know that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Kennard, anything you'd like to add?
I do not. Thank you.
All right. We'll go around. I'll start tonight with Councilor Ragu.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on our talk about racism, because we know it's not just the police. The police are getting so much attention right now because it was just this racism that was so tangible and it was so violent, and it was caught on tape. But we know it's pervasive. We know it's in our financial institutions. We know it's in our housing. We know it's in our employment. We know it has to do with environmental justice and pollution, whose neighborhoods get polluted. We know it's in healthcare, because we know Black Americans are dying 6 times more than anyone else. And so I've said this before, but I encourage us, look in the room around you. Let's look at the Zoom meeting. Let's look at who is around you. Who do you work with? Who are in these leadership meetings? Who are on these boards and these committees? And I would encourage, and I've said this before, Miami, who are the students that you're bringing on board? Is it diverse? Who are the professors that you're hiring? Who gets tenure? Who is just a visiting professor? And then I think from the city level, I've heard of the 3 years I've been on city council, I've heard of 2 city administrative people talk about the importance of diversity in hiring and being very intentional about it. And Chief Jones was one of them. And that made a really big impact on me a couple of years ago. And his message that he put out on Facebook, I think it's so important that it says that we should not confuse being staunchly against racist violence, whether it's police brutality or otherwise, don't confuse that with being anti-police, because it's not the same thing. And he knows that, and I hope all of us know that too. And I want to build on what Pat had said about and what Dr. Franklin had said too, with this police relations committee. I think that I'm really proud of the things Chief Jones has said and does, and I do believe in him. And I want that to be transparent. I want people to see what it is that he's doing and the police force is doing. And I want it to be as transparent as possible. I want Oxford to be a police force that we can shout across the rooftops that this is a model police force. And I think that it would be great to have an elected official on the committee. I would love to participate, and I volunteer to do so. And I look forward to exploring that in the future.
All right. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Councillor Ellerby.
Thank you, sir. All I can say about these situations is I'm not surprised. I mean, when Pat was talking about we need to hear people speak their truth, I'm a Black man. And even though I have light skin, some people say, like, you know, you're the whitest Black person that I've ever met because I have non-regional diction and I understand the English language fairly well. But I'm actually Blacker than probably the bluest Black people that you can possibly imagine, because I have to deal with not being Black enough for Black people and also not being white. So when I see stuff go on like what happened with Mr. Floyd, then I start looking back. So we also had two other incidents that occurred. We had that issue with Mr. Aubrey, and we also had an issue with Mrs. Cooper. And these all happened in rapid succession, culminating with what everybody saw on video, which was, you know, extremely blatant, but very telling about how America operates. And the first thing I want to say is Amy Cooper is the worst person in the world, because she knew and understood how how American law enforcement operates and used that to her advantage and said that on camera. See, she was bold enough and comfortable enough being able to do that. That's just something that everybody needs to think about. And with this particular officer in the case of Mr. Floyd, he knew that he could hide behind one particular legislative construct called qualified immunity. And when everybody talks about affecting change in a positive fashion, that's the first place that I suggest that everybody look towards, because there's two words in that particular legislation that are very, very broadly interpreted, and I would say are the cornerstone of what's going on here. And those two words are, let me pull this out, clearly established. And basically what that means is, unless there has already been a situation where a particular act of misconduct occurred, then an officer is not held responsible for their actions. And as a result, a lot of these things have gone unpunished, or let's just say held unaccountable. The next level of this is what both Trevor Noah and Killer Mike, the rapper, talked about at length in their videos that they released in the past couple of days. And that is, prosecutors aren't charging these people when these actions occur. Now, I'm all for police. Now, I'll say this, when I was younger, I was an adversary. I was not the friend of the police. And I had plenty of run-ins with them. And I've dealt with a lot of police interactions through my transition into adulthood. And now I can say that I am okay with police, but I will still say that whenever there is a stop that involves myself and police, the first thing that I'm thinking about, and I attribute this to my grandmother, Mildred Ellerby. She was an amazing woman, rest her soul. She told me, always survive the encounter first, because then you can defend yourself in court if you're lucky. And what I mean by that is, you know, you have individuals like Amy Cooper. You may be able to defend yourself, but Emmett Till never got that chance. You know, George Floyd never got that chance. There's Ahmaud Arbery never got that chance. But what I'm getting at is, I learned tactics in order to de-escalate situations where I've run into officers who wanted to escalate the situation and wanted me to give them a reason so that it will fall under qualified immunity to do whatever they want. And that's the issue that we're really focusing on if everyone is upset about Floyd. So when you talk about vigils and you talk about systemic racism, you know, I'm glad that I'm seeing people protest. I abhor the looters. Looting has no place in this society. That's just opportunists that are hiding under the cover of a political issue to take advantage on a selfish type of platform. But while I don't condone rioting, I understand that rioting is the tool of an individual that has an unfocused mind. They're upset. They've been basically operating in a hostile environment that nobody seems to notice for a long time. And now finally people have noticed it and they go, finally, I need to express myself. I don't know how. And then they riot. To those individuals that do that, I suggest that you find protesters and join them, because we've been seeing that peaceful protest is actually making some change. It's moving the needle a little bit. But again, the best way to protest is in November. I just hope that everybody remembers this in November. So when they want to hold an actual protest, they do it at the polls. They vote out the prosecutors that aren't doing the charging. They're voting out the legislators that are not doing the legislating that we want to see in our community. You know, I actually wanted to be on city council here in Oxford because of some things that I saw in Oxford before 2015 and was involved with stuff in 2015. And, you know, the Police Community Relations Commission was formed, and I've seen an improvement. And you know, with Chief Jones being coming on as chief, there's been improvements. And I actually like Oxford. I mean, I love Oxford. Miami, on the other hand, has a long way to go. Crawford has pointed that out. And, you know, Miami is a big part of this town. So hopefully they can start aligning some of those things. I know that the needle's moving over there. I just hope it continues. But all I can say to people out there in the public is protests and vigils are cool, but the polls are where things happen. And make sure that if you're going to protest, you follow through in November and you start voting those people out. You bully those people that are misbehaving by getting them out of office and by getting them out of those seats. And I mean, that's all I got. I'm starting to get mad.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Vice Mayor Snavely.
I think you have reason to be mad. And I'm mad. I'm angry. And I'm so angry that I decided, and this is unusual for me, I wrote it down. So bear with me. But otherwise, I probably would ramble for a long time. It's pretty obvious that our nation is in crisis. And our year began with news of the coronavirus, and the death toll began to rise in March, and now it's over 107,000 people. And that's just a number that is hard to even put my head around. And then the economic collapse, which is not a surprise, with unemployment levels not seen since the Great Depression. And if that weren't enough, then Americans witnessed the murder of a Black man jogging in his own neighborhood by white vigilantes. And now the brutal murder of George Floyd by a white officer and 3 others who just watched it happen. And these kinds of acts have happened before, sadly. And when they did, there was almost in every case, peaceful, localized protests, sometimes wider, and nothing changed. And so now we have nationwide protests by justifiably angry Americans. And some of that has turned violence, which I agree with Glenn, is wrong and shouldn't happen. And it's in this context that I want to commend our Oxford Police Chief, because Chief Jones' statement was powerful and it was timely, and it represents well the attitudes and practices of the OPD officers that I've known over the years. And I moved to Oxford 43 years ago, so I've known quite a few. So next Monday will be an Oxford Vigil, and I welcome this protest, and I encourage Oxford residents who wish to join it peacefully. And I recommend that you wear your mask and you practice social distancing. The national issues, unfortunately, will take a lot longer to resolve. And I would like to publicly denounce the president's unwarranted violent response to a peaceful protest last night, including tear gas, in order to have his photo opportunity. What we desperately need is compassionate, thoughtful leadership, but we don't have that now or likely in the near future. What we do not need is a military response, but it appears that we may get it. I know that I speak for many in our community when I say that I am very angry. I'm saddened that we're at this place. I look forward to a new day, and I'm extremely grateful to live in this city, protected and served by our Oxford Police Department. And I've had this pin for a long time, but it says silence is acceptance. Speak loudly. And I think we need to all be speaking loudly, and I hope we do that on Monday, but peacefully. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Councillor Southard.
Well, I've also lived here 40 years and also have that silence is not accepted. And I have to say that this country and its systematic racism is not going to be solved by one action. It has to take community action, and we all have to work together, which I think we have to try to do it better. We have to be more truthful. There has to be truth. There has to be dialogue before there can be any reconciliation. And so I hope that we will work together more for truth and recognize that injustice to one person is injustice to everyone. If you torture somebody, you have to allow them to scream. That was said by the architect of the US Holocaust Museum, James Freed. And for those who can't scream, we have to scream for them. And you know that I have spent many years working on just that for victims of the Holocaust. So we have to scream for all the victims of all injustice. And we struggle with what to do. We don't know what to do and how we can make things better. So people are doing a lot of things. You know, people are trying to do this small action, that small action. And I think every action should be celebrated. And some actions, you know, and we should work together as much as we can. In 2017, after the Charlottesville hate march, when white supremacists chanted racist and anti-Semitic slurs and killed a protester with a car plowing into the group. A group of citizens here got together and responded with a banner over High Street, and it said, "Love, not hate, Oxford." It was appreciated by the city and the community, and it was felt that it expressed some of our basic community values, deploring hatred. It's been damaged because of wind, and it's been reprinted now on two sides. The citizens appreciate the support of the city and thank the city, including the service department, for hanging it over High Street in the past and for doing it again in a few weeks to come. I want to say that the cost of just of the banner, not including the installation of this banner, will be $750. There have been many donations so far, I've been told. And I'm going to mention the names of the people who are organizing it. And if citizens want to make donations, they can. Donations are accepted by check to Marilyn Elsie. Her address is 3301 Spruce Lane, Oxford. And this work of the banner is, as I said, is a group of loosely organized citizens. This work is spearheaded by Marilyn Elsie and Margaret Beckwith. Supporting this cause, this doesn't stop individuals and groups from other forms of action. There are lots of other actions and group and things that you can do. There are various ways that you can help. There are bail funds, there are for protesters, there are lots of different things that we can do to help people who are protesting legally and making their voices heard without causing trouble. So supporting this doesn't mean stop any groups or individuals from doing other forms of action. And it's one way, not the only way. And there are some other groups that might move forward. We might hear more with proposing other banners with different messages or may propose other actions. But these are some of the actions that I know of that are being taken now. And I want to celebrate everybody who is trying as best we can to make this world a little bit better. And I'll see you all on Monday.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Southard. We'll move on to Councillor Bracken.
Thank you. I've spoken at length on these topics on social media. So I'm going to keep this one short and direct. I'd like to echo the sentiments of every one of the councillors and our staff. I stand in solidarity with those grieving and suffering at the hands of systemic racism and violence. And I plan to look deeply into ways that I can personally try to improve the situation and how we as a city can potentially improve the situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Prithridge.
Right, I want to echo sentiments, but I'll be brief, is that I am really proud to live in a community that I believe is really committed to social justice. And I think that we're committed to this not only with our words, but with our deeds, and I take a wide view on this. And I think that, some may think it's a radical project, but I was looking back at the US Constitution, which in order to form a more perfect union, the first thing it does is to say to establish justice. And then it talks about ensuring domestic tranquility and later things like general welfare. I think it's the most American thing to think about how to perfect your society so that it's just. And that's not just about the justice system, although that's the leading edge of it. It's in all the things that we do in the city of Oxford. And so I think, and it's in what you do and it's in how you do it. And so the chief was talking about procedural justice. How do you have a way of making decisions that, and how do you lead to outcomes? So two things I wanted to touch on today, which may not seem that way. One, again, I'm really proud to live in the city of Oxford, in which policing, which is the leading edge of our justice system, is so thoughtful that we have citizens working with the police. And if you look at the annual reports of the Review Commission, how carefully those citizens and the police department are wrestling with questions. And so as the chief said, this is a work that goes on forever. And so I think I'm thankful to have those people taking that time, asking hard questions and looking at themselves in there. Again, it's two things. One, it's about the substance of it. Is our policing, are the outcomes fair? And that's why I'm glad that that commission is asked about data, for example. But I really do want to comment on the idea of the procedure and how you go about it. So again, I do want to thank, I think about all this and looking at the national news, and I think about my local interactions, which is in the last couple of days, Chief Jones, I think statement was perfectly on point and just captured all the challenges and issues. And I'm so grateful that we've had a succession of thoughtful police chiefs in the city of Oxford. I have to relate the anecdote that I was actually down in Hamilton with my daughter. She and some young people organized a protest, and I was down there in Hamilton and approached by their police chief to thank us for protesting peacefully, and how that's a procedural thing, but it was so impactful for those young people to be thanked for their protest and the manner of their protest, that protest towards a more perfect union is the most American thing there is. So anyway, I'm really thankful, and I want to thank Latricia Hillman and all the others who have organized the vigil for next Monday, and to thank all who are going to participate in it. It's not a hard ask in the city of Oxford to say, hey, Oxford Police, can you participate in this? And I'm thankful that that's a natural thing for us. Just the segue I'd like to make is that I again take a broad view on social justice. So I think about all the ways in which what we can do can be fair to people. So I want to thank staff and council for bearing with the Parking and Transportation Board, which is trying to approach the way we do transportation projects in somewhat of a different procedural way. And so we established a complete streets policy, which was really actually a social justice policy. It's about fair access to the public space of the streets and safety for all. And so I appreciate staff and that board. And so as we look at upcoming projects, whether it's this summer or next summer, trying to make sure that the way people move around their communities is safe and that our infrastructure serves people equitably. Again, it's like with the policing issues, it's not easy, but you have to keep working at it and you have to keep asking the hard questions. So anyway, I just want to, it's a real privilege to live in a place like Oxford, but even in Oxford, it's going to be a continual project for us to be thoughtful and promote that kind of world. And you look at the world and you can't do that much about it, but we can try to control Oxford or to help Oxford along. And that's really a privilege to be in that role. Apropos of nothing, I just wanted to say that the new bridge arriving at the Oxford area trail, which passed me on the road, is super cool. So thanks that in a world full of a lot of disturbing news, we in Oxford are moving forward on some really great stuff. So thanks to everyone who helped with that. So thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to remind everyone that the parking meters start again tomorrow. But on a good note, I'm going to remind everyone that you can eat in a restaurant if you like. I visited several just to see. They're all doing social distance seating, and they've added screens in appropriate places to make sure everybody's safe. And I felt very comfortable at Mac and Joe's today. I want to thank staff and council for their insightful comments tonight. That was all very good. I want to thank the organizers of next Monday's vigil. When they first asked me to participate, one of their overriding factors was they wanted an event that they could bring their children to. Several of them had adolescent age children that expressed an interest in going to Cincinnati, and they didn't feel that that would be safe. So I look forward to Monday in a very safe atmosphere and a very open dialogue in a town where we are lucky to have so many people that care so much about what goes on. So with that, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Southard. Ms. Eaton, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mr. Ellerby,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Gregor,
Yes.
Mr. Snavely,
Yes.
Ms. Southard,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
We adjourn. I thank you all. That was a great meeting, and I will hopefully see you next time.
Stay safe.
Good night, everyone.